They were America's first family of fright.
It was one of a kind, very unusual, and we just didn't know what to expect.
Oh, we had lots of fun with that.
You ain't heard nothing yet.
It was such a bang.
With their monstrously funny take on life, the Munsters ruled the airways for 2 years on network television and for nearly 4 decades in rerun syndication.
We may have been different, but we were functional.
But behind the cobwebs and layers of latex and grease paint lies the flesh and blood true story of a group of actors who would remain forever haunted by the cult classic characters they created.
People watch these shows over and over again. So it seems like it's going to be with us forever.
You can't be too careful these days. There are a lot of strange people in this world.
(1964). It was the year of the Mustang, Little Surfer Girls, and the British invasion. It was also the year Life magazine dubbed TV's Year of the Monster. Ever since Universal Studios sold their library of famous Fright films to television in the 1950s, classic creatures like Dracula and Frankenstein had once again risen from their graves.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Within a decade, monsters had become eerily potent pitchmen, selling everything from magazines and model kits to board games and bubble bath. Monsters were now not only frightening, they were fun. Of course, the idea of funny monsters wasn't new. In 1945, kid-friendly versions of Hollywood's classic creatures were conceived by Bugs Bunny animator Bob Clampett, who wanted to feature them in a series of cartoons.
He developed a series called The Monster Family, which included Frankie Monster, he was the father, and he had a vampire wife. He submitted this to Universal and never heard anything about it again.
It wasn't until the early 1960s that the idea of a primetime monster sitcom began to haunt the imaginations of network television executives. In 1963, out-of-this-world fare like My Favorite Martian had proven hugely popular. Almost overnight, Hollywood began digging up their old movie monsters in an effort to capitalize on the creepy craze.
There was like this weird little cultural explosion at the moment about spoofing sitcoms through the conventions of fantasy and through horror.
Third Place ABC network began developing 2 spooky sitcoms, one about a sexy witch named Samantha, and another about a macabre family of misfits, based on New Yorker cartoonist Charles Addams' most popular illustrations. But the Addams family had been based in large part on Universal Studios' classic monster characters, so Universal TV executives wasted no time in an effort to scare up a creepy comedy series of their own for CBS. After Rocky and Bullwinkle writers Al Burns and Chris Hayward submitted a concept about a family of cartoon monsters living in suburbia, the idea was further developed by writers Norm Liebman and Ed Haas, under the watchful guidance of veteran producers Joe Connolly and Bob Mosher, the team responsible for the mega-hit sitcom Leave It to Beaver.
We always had 2 camps at CBS. Should it be a cartoon show? Should it be with real people? The thought about the Munsters as a cartoon continued until the pilot was made.
The script for the pilot told the story of a Frankenstein monster who was a mortician and the head of a family of ghouls.
We thought this is a sketch. We never saw it go beyond just being that. We never thought about casting. We never thought about, how do you make Frankenstein funny?
In an effort to find the perfect actors for the far-out project, the producers quickly cast popular New York stage and television personalities Fred Gwynne and Al Lewis, who had already demonstrated their brilliant comedy timing on the popular NBC sitcom Car 54, Where Are You?
The phone rang. He said, by the way, we're doing a pilot for a new series. Would you be interested? At first, I thought it was an idiot friend of mine, playing a practical joke.
The rubber-faced Lewis seemed the ideal choice to play Grandpa, the over-the-hill vampire who dabbles in black magic and delights in reminiscing about the good old days back in Transylvania. And at 6 feet 5 inches in height, Fred Gwynne was the perfect fit for the lumbering, bumbling patriarch, Herman Munster. In the spring of 1964, Universal Television executives commissioned the filming of a 16-minute presentation shot in color and based on an early script by Liebman and Haas.
Why are you whispering?
I don't want to wake your folks.
Oh, don't worry about them. They're always up all night.
It was intended to show CBS executives just what a family of funny monsters would look like in the flesh.
Someone's coming. Hi, Uncle Herman.
Hello, Marilyn.
I forgot my keys. I'd like you to meet my date. This is Jack. Oh, Uncle Herman. What's the matter with me anyway?
The test made the best of an existing set, theme music from an old Doris Day movie, and a cast that included Joan Marshall as Herman's vampire wife, Phoebe, Happy Derman as the couple's werewolf son, Eddie, and Beverly Owen as the Munsters' young niece, Marilyn, whose all-American beauty made her the family misfit.
The Munsters felt they were the most normal family around, and the one that they kind of took pity on was Pretty Marilyn, who seemed like a grotesque mutant in this family.
The character had been inspired by one of Hollywood's best-loved movie stars.
Think of the name, Marilyn Munster, Marilyn Monroe. Certainly the wig they put on me made me, no way would they ever make me look like Marilyn Monroe, but they sure tried.
You're home early, dear. Have a nice time.
Yes, I guess so.
Would you like to have a little something to eat?
No, thank you.
I have some warm lady fingers in the oven.
No. I think I'll just go right upstairs and go to bed. Night, everybody. Night, Uncle Herman.
Good night, Marilyn.
Good night, dear.
Although the presentation was photographed in color, the producers decided to hedge their bets by striking distribution prints in more cost-conscious black and white.
It was $10,000 more to do it in color than in black and white. And neither CBS or Universal was willing to pick up that extra $10,000 a segment, and that's why it was shot in black and white.
Eddie, would you come down here? I want to try this jacket on you.
CBS was eager to let the Munsters take up residence on their fall schedule.
Oh, you can't make me!
Don't talk fresh to your mother, and stop playing with that noose.
Oh, you can't make me!
But before the final decision to order the show was made, the network requested a series of significant finishing touches. Gone was Happy Derman's ferocious portrayal of Eddie Munster.
You never let me have any fun. I'm gonna hold my breath and turn myself back into a toad.
Gone, too, was Happy Derman, replaced by a more approachable Butch Patrick.
Happy Derman wasn't very happy. He was the meanest little kid I've ever seen, and the character that they wanted, at least the way I took it, was just a regular kid who happened to have loving parents and a family unit. But this kid seemed like so out there that I don't think he would have been very helpful in a Leave It to Beaver type attitude, which is, I think, what they were looking for.
Another casting casualty was Joan Marshall, whose eerie similarity to Carolyn Jones's interpretation of Morticia Addams seemed too close for comfort.
You think you're the only one who works hard? Huh? Well, how would you like to have to clean 9 rooms and a dungeon every day?
In an effort to give Herman's wife a warmer, more earthly appeal, veteran screen siren Yvonne DiCarlo joined the cast as Herman's steadfast vampire wife, Lily.
You think you're the only one who works hard? How would you like to have to clean 9 rooms and a dungeon every day?
I had done the 10 Commandments and other things that people remember. European people might remember those comedies that I did in England.
But for Gwynne and Lewis, the casting of the glamorous DiCarlo threatened to cause tensions on the set.
When Fred and I had heard that they had hired Yvonne DiCarlo, we went to the producers And being from New York, we barged in. What do you mean? And we were not too keen because she was a bona fide movie star. We thought she wouldn't fit in and play that kind of comedy.
But the chemistry between the principals now clicked, and any fears that Gwyn and Louis had about DeCarlo soon faded.
We were wrong. We were wrong, Fred and I.
You know, they just don't make men like you anymore.
The retooled presentation so impressed CBS executives that they ordered The Munsters as a series and slated the show for a spot on the network's fall lineup.
Now, you be a good boy. See? Mommy sewed the ear back on your woof-woof.
Gee, I don't want to go to bed yet. It's still dark out.
Eddie, you will do as you're told.
Oh, you're always picking on me. You never yell at Marilyn that way.
Just you never mind about Marilyn. You must remember she's not as fortunate as the rest of us. Now you run along on up to bed. And don't forget to close the lid.
CBS, they were adventurous in buying it because they had never had a show like that before.
Ooh, that's mighty powerful stuff.
When you do a pilot like that that's so different and unique, you're suspect, you know, is it going to work or isn't it going to work?
As the 1964 television season approached, it was anyone's guess if the resurrected creatures from Universal's vaults could live on, or if the Munsters would be destined for the TV sitcom graveyard. On Thursday, September 24th, 1964, The Munsters premiered on CBS with a title sequence that cleverly parodied the opening credits of wholesome sitcoms of the day. The show deliberately established a light tone in an effort to guarantee that children wouldn't be scared off.
They wanted to be Leave It to Beaver, Father Knows Best, The Donna Reed Show, all the family shows on television. They wanted to play against what they were, which was absolutely right. And they did it, and it worked very well.
Before we say goodnight, wouldn't you like to come in for a minute?
Mm-hmm.
And meet my folks.
They're standing real close, Lily. You know, this is the 4th date she's had with that young man.
Yes, it's amazing how some boys will overlook a girl's appearance.
You would never think on paper this would fly, but the characters became so friendly and so likable that after the first episode, you just totally bypassed the fact that they were monsters and you just started laughing and really loving them.
Boy, look at the neat lightning. I sure hope it hits our house.
Eddie, how do you like me as Priscilla?
Corny. Why don't you dress up as Lady Gorilla or something pretty like that?
I don't think even that would help me.
But in addition to the laughter, the Munsters' early episodes also featured sly moments of social commentary.
Oh, it's you, Mr. Blue.
Oh, yes, it's me, all right.
I thought it might be them.
Here they were, these different people, different color actually. They moved into your neighborhood. Did they bring property values down? All these things that people used to worry about back in the early 60s.
Well, those Munsters are not running me off my property, but I don't want them wandering over here, if you know what I mean.
Within weeks of its premiere, The Munsters was a bona fide hit, joining Bonanza, Gunsmoke, and the Beverly Hillbillies on the coveted list of top-rated TV shows.
Stop now. Are you kidding? You hear him out there? I'm a smash.
Kids really got The Munsters. I mean, I know I did. I mean, it was like this whole notion of turning domestic sitcoms on their head.
Its success for the children brought many adults to the set, and they all seemed to find it acceptable.
Yet, in spite of its instant popularity, the series did have its share of growing pains. The production process was slow due to the amount of time it took to transform the show's actors into Munsters.
It was a heavy show. You know, we had to be there 6 o'clock, 2-hour makeup and the hair.
My makeup was like a model's makeup that would have to put on for modeling and going down the runway, and except for the hair. The hair was extreme.
Say, listen, why don't you send it that man who does your hair?
He's just a mortician, not a miracle worker.
She had like 6 people that walked her around because of her wig. She had this huge wig that, weighed 20 pounds. It was unbelievable. It was really nuts.
It was a process that was not only painstaking, it was often downright painful.
Fred had the headpiece and the bolts and the foam. Terrible.
He had that big, heavy outfit that he put on. Underneath was all made out of rubber. It was a suit that they had underneath his wardrobe.
He suffered terribly, Fred, under the foam. And then he had the clothes on top. And he used to sweat unbelievable.
He would put this air hose down inside the suit and blow cold air down there, drink gallons and gallons and gallons of lemonade to keep from being dehydrated, but he still got thinner and thinner and thinner. He really lost a lot of weight doing the show.
Although Beverly Owen didn't have to endure hours in the makeup chair, the 25-year-old actress did have to deal with another serious challenge: homesickness. Earlier convinced that the series wouldn't sell, Beverly had reluctantly relocated from New York City to Los Angeles.
I got a call to come and do a pilot, and I said, but I'm in love with someone in New York. I don't want to move to... Well, just come out and do the pilot. And I did, and so it was when I got the call that it was going to series that I was no longer happy.
The cross-country move separated the actress from her boyfriend, and she desperately missed him.
She started to cry and cry and cry, and finally she just didn't want even to come to work.
Well, I'd signed one of those 7-year Hollywood contracts, and I certainly didn't get a lawyer. I just believed what they told me.
Fred and Al went to the producers and said, this woman is miserable, she's crying all the time, let her out of the contract, or we'll leave. So basically, they gave them an ultimatum. If they don't let her go home, the show's over.
After just 13 episodes, Beverly Owen packed her bags, returned to New York City, and ultimately married her boyfriend. But now, less than halfway through the series' critical first season, the show's producers were desperate to find another Marilyn Munster. Following an exhaustive search, they hired Pat Priest, the actress daughter of U.S. Secretary of the Treasury Ivy Baker Priest. Although nearly 30, Pat bore a striking resemblance to Beverly Owen. She also had another attribute, which appealed to the cost-conscious production team.
When I went in to do the test, I happened to fit into Beverly's clothes. They dressed me like Beverly, they did my hair like Beverly, and I guess I was enough of the same stature and size that it worked.
On December 24th, 1964, Pat Priest slipped into the role of Marilyn Munster. Ironically, many viewers didn't even realize a change had been made.
Marilyn, are you sure you won't be frightened staying here alone?
Oh, of course not, Aunt Lily. How could I be frightened staying in a friendly old house like this?
With the cast members now firmly established, the Munsters began to hit a creative stride. Rather than depend on the one-joke premise of a family of monsters living life in a suburban neighborhood, the series quickly evolved into a creative showcase for Gwyn, Lewis, and DeCarlo. Herman Munster went from being lumbering, deadpan, and dour to childlike, simple-minded, and gentle-hearted.
Oh, it's only you.
Grandpa became the straight man, a cross between a geriatric Dracula and a mad scientist. Lily Munster often served as referee and soon developed as the show's strong emotional center.
Please, darling, eat.
I'm eating. I'm eating.
I'm talking to Eddie.
Audiences and critics were beginning to take notice. And the comic timing between the Harvard-educated Gwyn and the stage-trained Lewis showcased what soon became what many considered one of television's greatest comedy teams.
They really were up there, as far as comedic teams with, Laurel and Hardy, Abbott and Costello, you name them.
You had Al Lewis, who was from vaudeville and burlesque and great shtick, and you had sort of this benign, childlike figure of Herman Munster that Fred Gwynne played. I think there's where you get your sort of like Laurel and Hardy comparisons and Abbott and Costello, because they did establish a rhythm together.
You'll never last. You'll eat before the day is up.
Oh, no, I won't.
Today's Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving?
I told you he wouldn't make it.
You mean Thanksgiving with turkey and cranberry sauce? That kind of Thanksgiving?
Yeah, that's the kind with the dressing and the mashed potatoes and the gravy.
The dressing, the mashed potatoes, and the gravy.
And the pickled beets and the mushrooms and the candied yams.
The pickled beets, the mushrooms, the candied yams.
And the homemade biscuits oozing with melted butter.
Homemade biscuits oozing with melted butter.
And don't forget the pumpkin pie.
Pumpkin pie.
It was just great fun. Anything went as long as it was funny.
The show's storylines often featured traditional sitcom situations, but with a decidedly monstrous spin.
I have some wonderful news for you, dear, and I can't keep it in any longer. I'm busting at the seams.
Oh, well, don't do it in here, dear. I'm getting supper.
Other situations were more outlandish, like the time when Grandpa turned himself into a wolf during a family outing and had to be smuggled to safety by Lily.
He forgot how to change himself back, so when she got him, she had to wear him as a stole around her neck.
All right, Grandpa, you can let go of your tail now.
Easy does it. Grandpa, I am not going too fast, and don't be a front seat driver.
It was a unique show. The characters were new and fresh. They were funny. The writing was excellent. The humor was good.
The Munsters had proven popular with audiences of all ages. There seemed to be no end in sight for the series that many said just couldn't work and would never last. But, just like every good horror movie, it isn't long before the sun comes up. And as everybody knows, monsters and Munsters don't last long in the daylight. By the spring of 1965, the Munsters had become a monster hit for CBS.
It created a following. Kids just loved it. It wasn't Playhouse 90 drama by any means, but it was entertaining, and there was nothing in it that was obscene.
Television audiences couldn't seem to get enough of the freaky family with the souped-up car, a pet dragon named Spot,
Oh, hi, Spot. Well done, please.
and a taste for all things macabre.
Now that's how to cook a sword.
The Munsters may have looked like monsters, but underneath the stitches, neck bolts, and widow's peaked hairdos, they were an otherwise normal, loving suburban family.
They were telling the same kind of plots you would get any other kind of a sitcom. Very suburban, very benign kind of family sitcoms, father knows best kind of shows. These were the nicest monsters you could ever hope to meet, I suppose.
The Munsters had captured the imagination of viewers as few shows could.
It was like, what makes Halloween popular? Well, multiply that times 10, and that same type of feeling is what the Munsters was radiating through the TV set.
Executives at Universal capitalized on the show's popularity with an aggressive merchandising campaign. The Munsters images adorned everything from dolls and lunchboxes to board games, model kits, and masks.
They realized that if you had a very high concept kind of a show, that merchandising was going to just take it to the next level of profitability.
There were puppets, a line of Munster jewelry, Munster clothing, and even a rock and roll album featuring a group of musicians wearing Munster masks.
They had just tons of stuff. And I can remember one of the toy stores, they had like a whole Munsters display. The whole corner set up with all the stuff sitting there. And I remember just looking and going, wow, this is really pretty cool.
But amid the mountain of Munster merchandise, perhaps the most coveted of all were model kits and plastic replicas of the Munster coach. The real-life Munster coach was created and built by legendary custom car designer George Barris.
It was actually a 6-door, 3 Model Ts in one, made into a ghoulish effect.
It featured spider-webbed headlights, blood-red upholstery, and a radiator that looked suspiciously like a tombstone.
The actual middle of the car was built like a chemistry laboratory for Al Lewis to put his brew together. Fred Gwynne would sit in the front with Yvonne DiCarlo, and they would drive the car. And of course, Pat Priest and Butch Patrick was up on the little piggyback with his little Wolf doll.
The Munsters coach, I think, became almost as much It got almost as much of a fan following as the actors on the show. There were magazine articles, and it was a really neat-looking thing.
The 18-foot-long coach cost producers close to $20,000, but it was money well spent. And its enormous popularity prompted producers Joe Connolly and Bob Mosher to conceive of another, even more outlandish dragster for Grandpa to drive, the Dragula. As the Munsters' enormous popularity continued to grow, the cast was recruited to promote the series at numerous personal appearances. They guest starred on variety shows and performed in public service announcements.
We would like to hear from you on how the money should be spent the government has allocated for your benefit.
They pitched breakfast cereal.
This is my father. He hangs pictures, helps Mommy with the cleaning. Where does he get his go? From me. I lend him my Cheerios. Daddy says they're the greatest thing since bat wings. Mommy says they give him protein and stuff. Give your father some go. And he might play catch with you.
The cast even hosted an Easter Sunday variety show, shot on location at Marineland.
You can help the Munsters pick out a pet for Eddie. Of course, Herman, Grandpa, and Lily insist on something lovable, like a shark. Watch the Munsters have a whale of a good time at Marineland Carnival.
The Munsters seemed to be spending as much time promoting the show as they did making it.
We would have sent them to the moon if we could have at the time. When you have a hit, you're very anxious to send them on the road, get them to do it.
Seeing the Munsters in the gray-green flesh was just about every kid's dream. And when Universal Studios threw open its gates to visitors, the show's fans got their chance. The Munster Mansion at the fictional 1313 Mockingbird Lane was one of the top attractions on the studio tour.
Oh, talk about fantasy. I mean, everybody I knew kind of wanted to live in the Munsters house. It just seemed like the coolest house ever.
And if the Munsters happened to be in production on the back lot, the trams would often stop for pictures and even a handshake or two.
All these people were coming and looking and for what they could see. They were allowed on in groups, little children and grown-ups.
It got to a point where, to give you an example, while we're making the show, you could be in the middle of a scene, and on the back lot, we'd have to stop shooting if we were right in the middle of a scene. Didn't matter. Here comes the tourists through.
The tour even included a visit to the full-sized mock-up of Grandpa's dungeon laboratory. At the press of a button, a replica of Herman would come to life and open his eyes. But for the flesh and blood actors who played the Munsters, the series' exhausting shooting schedule was taking its toll. 39 episodes were filmed in the first season, and the cast was looking forward to a much-deserved summer hiatus. Publicly, they were proud of the show's enormous popularity. But privately, they worried whether their careers could survive after one more season on Mockingbird Lane. By the fall of 1965, the Munsters had become full-fledged pop culture icons.
Fred Gwynne and Al Lewis must be fine, clean-cut boys to escort Santa Claus to town. Incidentally, they wish you a monstrously Merry Christmas.
The series' second season was kicked off with a new, energetic opening title sequence. And episodes were even more bizarre than ever.
You wouldn't want to go out to a nightclub, would you?
The new, broader comedy approach was an attempt by the show's producers to keep the series fresh. But even though the Munsters still kept audiences laughing, the same could not be said of Fred Gwynne and Al Lewis, who felt the new direction was hurting the series.
Fred and I were in constant battle with Joe Connolly and Bob Mosher. We thought that the show could be more satirical.
Fred was a very intelligent guy, and he would debate things that he thought needed to be debated.
I don't infer that we thought that the scripts were bad, but we thought that they could be better.
One episode that Fred Gwynne did enjoy doing that year was called Just Another Pretty Face. In it, the versatile actor got a welcome opportunity to perform without his Munster makeup, when Herman Munster is accidentally transformed into a normal-looking man.
Herman?
What?
I've got it. We'll make an appointment with Dr. Dudley to discuss the possibility of plastic surgery.
Plastic surgery. Plastic surgery? Lily, what a wonderful idea. I could kiss you. As a matter of fact, I think I will. You don't want... My own wife doesn't want me to kiss her.
But by 1966, keeping the Munsters fresh and funny wasn't the only challenge the producers faced each week. In January of that year, Batman exploded on the ABC network. Broadcast 2 nights per week, The Adventures of the Caped Crusaders became an instant ratings hit. Still produced in black and white, the Munsters looked deathly pale next to the campy and colorful Batman.
It splits some of the audience, and the new one takes place of the old. Kids are very fickle.
In an effort to win back their core audience, the Munsters cast members did even more personal appearances. At one such venue, Eddie Munster was accompanied by a pet gorilla named Kogar. As performed by Bob Burns, the playful primate was intended by the producers as a new character for the series.
We went to a place in Arizona, one of the first shopping malls in Arizona. Eddie was signing autographs and stuff, and a big crowd turned out. All the kids identified with Eddie, of course.
But in the end, clever promotion and outlandish storylines couldn't keep Batman from burying the Munsters. In the spring of 1966, the Caped Crusaders seemed to have dealt the Frightful family a final ratings blow when CBS canceled the spooky sitcom.
It's positively un-American.
I think it just got more and more out of welcome, and the shows were getting thin, and they weren't as funny.
Oddly enough, the Addams Family was canceled around the same time, so maybe that type of humor had run its course.
After 2 seasons and 70 episodes, the Munsters were about to vanish from network television. But Universal Studios wasn't yet willing to let their latest monster franchise slip away. Plans were already underway for a low-budget feature film designed to introduce the Munsters to lucrative overseas markets. And this time, the Frightful family would be showcased in all their gray-green glory.
I'm Herman Munster. Don't I look frightfully handsome in Technicolor? Allow me to present my wife, Lily.
Pleased to meet you.
And Grandpa?
Hello there. I'm glad I was just hanging around the house.
My handsome son, Eddie. And the unfortunate member of our family, my niece, Marilyn.
For the role of Marilyn, producers Connolly and Mosher cast 17-year-old ingenue Debbie Watson. Watson was well known to television audiences as the star of TV's Tammy and another Connolly and Mosher sitcom, Karen. She was also closer in age to Lily's college co-ed niece than the 30-year-old Pat Priest.
I kind of came into the movie as more of an outsider because they were a family working together every day, but everyone was so professional and nice to me that it was never a problem for me.
But the news of the switch came as a crushing blow to Pat Priest, who had learned of the change while she was still shooting the series.
I was devastated, just devastated. And they came down on the set and told me. And Al came, and he was so sweet. And he and Fred went to the producers and went to bat for me. It didn't work, but they did it.
For the rest of the Munster clan, the experience of making Munster Go Home was bittersweet.
This was our last hurrah, so we kind of had some fun with it because we knew it was only going to be a 6-week shoot, and then we'd all be on our merry way. So it was neat.
Herman Munster inherits a fortune and a castle full of homicidal relatives.
This is the secret of Munster Hall.
Call the police.
Right.
Get the FBI.
Will do.
Call Scotland Yard.
Right now.
Phone Batman.
I got it.
Car 54, where are you?
The close-knit camaraderie that the Munsters cast had developed was coming to an end. But so were countless hours in the makeup chair and the nagging doubts about whether or not the offbeat series had doomed them to be typecast.
See Herman Munster in his Dracula challenge some of the world's fastest cars in history's weirdest race.
It's frightfully funny.
The last shot of that movie was actually the last shot of the movie. It was really a kind of a sad situation because here it was about 11 o'clock at night. We drove away, we all got out of the car and took our makeup off and just parted ways. Just poof, see you later.
But as the ghoulish makeup, wigs, and costumes were being put into storage, there were many who doubted that the series and its characters could ever really stay buried forever. Just like their classic big screen counterparts, Munsters, like monsters, would find a way to rise again.
You go that way, Lily, you go that way, and I'll go this way.
Although The Munsters had been canceled and was no longer on CBS, the comedy soon turned up in syndication and quickly became a favorite with new generations of fans.
A lot of people who really didn't pay that much attention to the show when it was first on started watching it. And it became a cult show or a cult franchise.
8:30. It's time for my favorite TV program.
But for the actors who played the Munsters, the ever-present popularity of the series offered a mixed blessing. They were each eager to get on with their lives and rekindle their careers. Beverly Owen found work in television commercials and even earned a master's degree in American history. Pat Priest continued her acting career, as did Butch Patrick, in television and movies. Yvonne DiCarlo also made films and later debuted on Broadway in the much-heralded role of Carlotta in the original production of Stephen Sondheim's Follies. Grandpa Al Lewis appeared in numerous films and television roles and became known as everything from a basketball scout and restaurateur to a political candidate for the Green Party. But for Fred Gwynne, the role of Herman Munster proved the hardest to live down. The lantern-jawed leading man retreated to his home in upstate New York, where he became well known as the author and illustrator of best-selling children's books. He was also a critically acclaimed presence in numerous Broadway plays. But critics and audiences were less than charitable to a forgettable effort on the part of Universal to relaunch The Munsters as a Saturday morning cartoon. Faring better was a 1981 TV movie called The Munsters' Revenge, which reunited Gwynne, Lewis, and DiCarlo, and was intended as a test for a new Munsters series on NBC.
We were very hopeful, but they put it on the night that they had The Wizard of Oz. I remember Al saying, "Oh, we have no chance."
In 1988, Universal gave The Munsters a head-to-toe makeover with The Munsters Today. The syndicated sitcom starred John Shook, Lee Merriweather, and Howard Morton, but many felt that the new incarnation lacked the charm of the original series.
As far as I'm concerned, you can't replace Al Lewis, Fred Gwynne, and Yvonne DiCarlo. You can replace me, but you can't replace them. They were one of a kind.
By the early 1990s, the original cast of The Munsters had made peace with their coffin-dwelling characters. And Fred Gwynne had managed to jumpstart his stalled film career with scene-stealing roles in movies like The Cotton Club, Pet Sematary, and My Cousin Vinny. But on July 2nd, 1993, Munster fans around the world were devastated when they learned that Fred Gwynne had died of pancreatic cancer.
He was a talented man, talented artist.
As a TV dad, he was the best you could ask for. Some of my favorite memories were working with Fred in our little father and son talks. He was a great guy.
He was a good man. And when you get that kind of relationship, the one thing you don't do is question it. What you do is you find joy in it and relish it and build on it.
But even as the man who would forever be known as television's favorite Frankenstein was being laid to rest, Universal was making plans to bring the Munsters back from the grave. In 1995, the TV movie Here Come the Munsters featured Veronica Hamill, Robert Morse, and Edward Herrmann as Herman Munster.
I just tried to do Fred's version of it. He's this wonderfully decent guy who can't quite control his physical power and is simple and innocent and sweet. And it's a wonderful choice.
The TV movie also treated fans to a scene in which Al Lewis,
My name is Herman. I'll be your waiter.
Yvonne DiCarlo, Butch Patrick, and Pat Priest come face to face with Edward Herman as Herman Munster.
You from Connecticut?
Part of me might be.
Herman, yeah. Well, I'll have the fresh kill of the day.
Grandpa, stop it.
Edward Herman did a great Herman Munster, and he was very nice, and it was a very funny feeling because we're sitting there at the table, and here comes Herman serving us, and it's kind of like spooky, you know?
Today, after nearly 4 decades of haunting television screens, the Munsters are as popular as ever.
We have 3 generations now of people that watch the show with their kids, and the kids love it just as much as the parents.
It has never been out of syndication in the United States, and it's still running in about 40 foreign countries in their languages.
In addition to TV, movies, and non-stop reruns, there are new incarnations of dolls, model kits, comic books, and trading cards. The Munsters' famous faces can be spotted on everything from lottery tickets to slot machines. Since their debut in 1964, the Munsters has proven just as enduring as the classic movie monsters that inspired them. Their lasting popularity seems to give proof to the notion that you just can't keep a good monster down.
I go out and do these memorabilia shows, and children will come up to me, and they think it was filmed last week.
It's very important nowadays to have a sense of humor.
The jokes hold up. The physical humor holds up. The sight gags are wonderful.
And stop biting your nails.
It was well written. It was quality.
You'd think I'd be allowed at least one night out the house.
It wasn't specific to a time and place, and somehow it doesn't seem dated.
Part of the success, why it's been around that many years, is that you could see that we were having fun doing it.
There's certain old shows that people just can watch them over and over and over. They just can't get enough of it, and they don't care if they've seen it 400 times. They'll watch it 401 times. I think people just truly enjoyed it.
Well, the main thing is that we're all together once again as a normal, happy family.
That's right.